Hello, my History 125 students. This is Professor Collins again, talking to you today about week 6 and the expectations from the readings for week 6 and the questions around that. A little bit about week 5 and your week 4 assignment and leading into your week 7 assignment as well. So really sort of a smash up of things. But at this point, we're into the last 3 weeks of the semester, so week 6, 7, and 8. And this period pretty much covers the last 200 years of history of science and technology worldwide, with a focus primarily on the West, which is Western Europe, United States, Japan, maybe a little bit, and that's about it. So your readings tend to be focused on that. And the main theme around these week readings over the next 3 weeks, and you saw a little bit of that in week 5, but you'll see more of that in weeks 6 and 7, is the theme around there are consequences to new technologies. There are consequences to new scientific methods and new scientific ideas and innovations. And the reason for that is while our technology is evolving fairly rapidly and while scientific breakthroughs are being made on a fairly frequent basis, humanity's not evolving with it as nearly as quickly. We're learning hard lessons pretty much whenever we put a new technology in play. We know that today, and we'll talk about that in much more detail for week 8, where we get to things like, the Green Revolution and climate change, for instance, agribusinesses and climate change, nuclear weapons and things of that nature, things that can kind of destroy life and destroy civilizations in a matter of, and with climate change, decades, or in a matter of nuclear weapons, a couple hours, right? So there's that sort of thing. But we're not there yet. So we're still talking about the industrial age and the biological aspects, the biomedical aspects of the industrial age, particularly around evolution. Week 6 readings center around, excuse me, the warping of Darwinian theory around evolution, which is not really theory anymore, and how that has been warped into things like eugenics, the final solution with the Nazis, sterilization, and other things involving folks who are not white, who are not Caucasian, who are not European, um, and and folks who are not able-bodied, the disabled, right? So racist and ableist kinds of thoughts around survival of the fittest, natural selection, and all those other things. And ironically, the key person involved in this is a guy named Francis Galton. Francis Galton is a cousin of Charles Darwin. And Francis Galton is the one that sort of takes the origin of species and Darwinian ideas around natural selection and mutation, all those, and comes up with a way of something called social Darwinism, the idea that some human beings deserve to live more than others. If you are able-bodied, if you are superior intellectually and physically, then you deserve to live. Ultimately, if there's ever a problem with the species, you deserve to go on, and other folks don't. In other words, taking control over natural selection in order to do unnatural selection, artificial selection, the selection of human beings who are deemed to be superior to others. And when combined with scientific racism through various methodologies, there's, in terms of pseudosciences, if you will, like measuring the size of people's skulls to determine that some people's skulls were bigger than others, and therefore certain men were more intelligent than other men, and therefore those other men weren't full men as a result. Or for that matter, that if you want to go and be sexist about this, that women were less intelligent than men because women's skulls tend to be smaller than men's skulls, for instance. Just throwing that one out there. For those of you who think I'm concentrating too much about race on something that is entirely about race and racism. So anyway, so the fact is that through that you have this scientific racism where WASPs, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, are at the top of the human food chain. They are the most superior of all different races, according to scientific racism. WASPs, for those of you who do not know, are basically Anglo-Americans. They're English folk, they're Scots, they're Scandinavians, they're Germans, they're French, they're Dutch. They're folks who are descended from them living in places like the United States and Australia and New Zealand and South Africa and other places. So you can keep that in mind. In Canada, where they roll their O's and things like that, and places like that. Next are Southern Eastern Europeans. They're in another category. So Spaniards, Italianos, Greeks, Poles, Russians, they're in the second category. Asians would be third, particularly East Asians, so East and South Asians. So if you're from Pakistan or India, if you are from China or Japan or Korea, you tend to fall in that third category. Africans are fourth. All Africans, doesn't matter what part of the African continent they're from, or whether they're descendant or half white or 7/8 white. As far as they're concerned, one drop of Africanness makes you inferior automatically. And then indigenous groups are in the final category. So Aborigines in Australia, excuse me, First Nation tribes in Canada, Native Americans of what is now the United States, et cetera, fall under that category. There are folks who fall outside the guidelines, most particularly Jews, because they're considered a quote-unquote mongrel race. Therefore, they don't fit in any particular category. And that comes into play when the Nazis take up this ideology and try to implement it on a systemic level, which leads ultimately to discrimination, oppression, stripping away of rights, dehumanization, and gradually gathering folks that they conquered around Europe into concentration camps where they eventually started exterminating them. Genocide, Holocaust, right? So that's where a philosophy like that can lead you. And these scientists practice this philosophy in sort of a backwards sort of way, where instead of trying to do experiments to try to figure out one way or the other whether certain groups are superior to others, they assume they were. And then they work backwards in order to figure that out through skull measurements and other things, right? So that's what we're talking about in terms of the main themes for the week. So in addition to sterilizing folks with women with Down syndrome, performing vasectomies or men with Down syndrome, and other groups in Germany, folks being killed because they have cerebral palsy, or because they have autism, or because they have Down syndrome for that matter. Literally exterminated 200,000 of them in Germany during the 1930s and early to mid 40s. So that's all part of what you're learning this week, which makes this a very tough week in terms of doing the readings. So do not, when you think about answering these questions finally for week 6, the idea that folks, human beings or scientists or historians for that matter, can be 100% objective is, well, it's not possible. We're human beings. We're imperfect. So no one's 100% objective. But we can be 100% fair. We can be 100% about trying to find the truth of things, right? And so I want you to understand that there's a difference between perfect objectivity, which we do not have, and being as close to perfect as we can be around fairness and truthfulness, which is something that I think any scientist or historian can actually achieve. So if you say it's our responsibility to be 100% objective all the time, that sounds nice, but it sounds like you're reading from the handbook of perfectness, and not something that's realistic. So just putting that out there. So we've got about 5 minutes. In general, from your sources assignments went from pretty good to really, really good. Most of you came up with ideas relevant to the class. There are about 4 of you who did not, who decided to pick a problem that was a social problem that had social and policy related kinds of solutions, but not scientific and technological ones. And this course is technological transformation. It's not social reform, not social justice. So if you're going to do a project that deals with a problem or solution at a local or state or federal or national or global level, you need to have something that where the solution is somehow steeped in science and technology. If not, it's not relevant, and you're going to lose points for it. I'm not going to fail you because doesn't make sense to fail you for actually doing the assignment, even if you didn't do it as 100% as planned at this point, because it's not a 16-week course. But you're going to lose points. You're not going to get an A on this if you don't follow that instruction. So, and please also follow the style that you say you're going to follow. If you're doing Chicago style, then do Chicago style, not Turabian. If you're going to do APA style, you better check your capitalization and punctuation and other things that are a part of doing APA. Don't mix styles. Those are the things that I would say in general that I came away with and saying, well, you need to do better around this, even though you didn't do badly. And then finally, for those of you who have not done the week 4 assignment at all, you are losing 10% for every week that the assignment is overdue. So we're in week 6, so the highest grade you can now get on the assignment is basically a high B, a borderline A minus, basically a B plus. So please, if you haven't done your assignment for week 4 already, get it done because it helps set up your week 7 assignment. So there's that. And then finally, for the week 7 assignment itself, um, I'll provide I'll provide a sample for you to look at to see how you should format it and construct it. Do not follow it to the letter because because everyone can, bring in different materials. You can add pictures, you can add video or sound if you think you want to do that. You can also add the verbiage of your summary of the problem to the first, full slide after the title slide. You need to have a reference list at the end of it, of course. And then there's some other things in the middle that I'll talk about in the email that I sent out to everybody with the sample. So those are the things that I really wanted to talk to you about for week 6. But otherwise, I think most of you who have been doing everything that you're supposed to be doing in the discussions on a regular basis, posting on time, responding to your classmates, even responding to me on occasion, keep doing that because you're doing well. For those who aren't doing that regularly, you need to step it up and do that as we finish off the semester. And please, by all means, read both my private comments to you and read the comments that I've been making as well as part of the discussion. I'm trying to help. I'm not trying to hurt anybody here. I'm really trying to help you be better at what you're doing and to think through the things that you're posting, not just for a grade, not just for a score, but because I kind of want you to learn the material too. So, have a good week.